Hello, welcome to the video. In this video, I'm gonna open up the topic of some conspiracy theories and basically the future, the immediate future for us incarnate as humans in this lifetime. So basically, we're gonna go through some things. We've already gone through some things, but they were just the tip of the iceberg. So, first things first. Humanity is shifting right now. The age is shifting. We are shifting from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And the Aquarian nature is very technological, very digital, very innovative, whichever way is the right way of pronouncing that word. Very revolutionary, but this can be turned against humanity, unfortunately, and it's been used against humanity. Technology, pretty much, the kind of technology that we have today was not given to humans with the intention of helping humans. It was given to humans with the intention of enslaving humanity, with the intention of controlling humanity. And the people who want to control humanity, some of them are other humans, some of them are other type of beings who are not necessarily incarnate. Some of them are even at the threshold. Some of them it's a whole talk, but I don't want to go into that. Basically, there's a dark elite, so-called elite, that just wants to do a number on humanity that humanity basically cannot recover from. But that's why we are incarnate, to not let that happen. There are a lot of people out there who talk about what's going to happen next, and they are called conspiracy theorists. They basically connect the dots and they say this is gonna happen based on this and that. Now, there are also other people who are psychics, who give information based on what they see, what they hear, what they download. And there are other people who use astrology to look into the future, to see the patterns of the past, and based on that, to draw a map of future events. And I'm gonna use some of that knowledge in this video to talk about what's going to happen, what we can expect, and most of all, what we should do. And right away, what we should do is just stand together. Be together, ideally, physically together, if we could. That'd be great. And basically, humanity is met with two choices at this point. awakening and getting back into union with spirit and living a life of abundance, not just physical, material abundance, but also spiritual abundance. Or the other choice, which is the choice that most humans will choose without even realizing, the choice of normality, the choice of what the nowadays elite politicians deem as compliance. So a lot of humans will go that road, unfortunately. That's the majority of humans, and because of that, it's gonna be hard for the rest of us because we are somewhat of a minority in terms of numbers. But I suppose everyone watching this video knows what coronavirus crisis was all about, and the whole vaccine thing and all of that. And I also want to talk about predictive programming, because predictive programming is basically a tool they use to program humans. That's exactly why it's called predictive programming. It's basically media, mass media is used as a tool of brainwashing, not just brainwashing, but also controlling the mind and mentality of humanity on a general level. And one of the ways they do this is through predictive programming. Predictive programming is basically showing you the future, like what's gonna happen in movies, in series, in cartoons, but it's not exactly how it's gonna happen. It's more or less similar to what our reality will look like in the near future. And this is because when people watch those cartoons, series, movies, their brains go into alpha state, and in the alpha state, the alpha brainwaves, basically that's when you absorb very easily information into your subconscious. The conscious filter is not so active anymore, and most of the times the story of our future is kind of in the details. It's kind of in the background, more or less. Because basically in movies and series and cartoons, the main storyline is the life, the actions, the thoughts of a character. And the story follows that character's life in a certain environment, in a certain world. But that's where the predictive programming lies, in that world, in how that world looks like, basically in the environment of those characters. And they also use empathy, because they most of the times make those characters very relatable. They make them very human. Those characters go through certain things and emotions and highs and lows, and most humans can relate to that. So, and basically when the future occurs with all of those, I'm sorry, my nose keeps itching. With all of those already predicted events in the media, but covertly predicted, because they were covertly predicted, covertly shown, humans will not tend to rebel against those things that much because they have already been trained subconsciously to see those things as somewhat normal, even though their conscious mind doesn't acknowledge them as normal yet. But their subconscious has already seen those things and has already agreed to those things. That's another part of this whole process. Because by predictive programming and by instilling those scenarios in people's subconscious, it's basically making people agree to those scenarios. So that's why you get things like 2020, like 2019, 2020, and 2021. And that's why you get compliance. And prior to 2019, 2020, and 2021, in media there were a lot of movies and series and cartoons and comic books with, guess what, zombies. And the zombies were basically humans turned into zombies by guess what? An infection. A virus of some sorts that was spreading so easily from one person to another. And usually it was through a bite. People being bitten by the zombies. And the most emblematic movie out of what I have seen is DayZ, where there's a whole zombie scenario, and the way they solve that scenario is through a vaccine. But the whole thing in that I don't know if it's worth going into all the details of that movie, but basically it's exactly what happened in 2019, 2020, and 2021. It starts in China. Nobody knows where it started. Nobody knows who the patient zero was. It's a whole mystery. And it spreads all across the world. The world descends into chaos. Somehow, Israel knows about this and shelters itself against this. And they figure out that the virus will not infect people who are sick of a deadly disease. And they figure out that that's the cure for the zombie infection. And they basically, their vaccine is a deadly disease. People are injected with a deadly disease so that the zombies will not see them anymore as potential other zombies. Does it sound familiar? Does the shoe fit? And there are endless, well, not endless, but a lot of other TV series and movies and cartoons and whatnot with zombie stories. And there still are to this day, even after 2021. But that was majorly the first zombie outbreak, to say so. And people were already subconsciously prepared for that. And if you look at the World Economic Forum, they say that There's going to be another pandemic, another inevitable, that's the exact word they use, inevitable pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, world crisis that's going to be, they say it's going to be a cyber attack, a cybernetic attack. Who knows from whom? Another phantom threat. And they say it's basically going to be a blackout. And if you look into predictive programming, what does this resemble? It basically, it is all of those post-apocalyptic scenarios where there's a blackout, a fallout of some sorts. Humanity doesn't have any electricity anymore, any of the technology that it's become so dependent on, and it's sent into severe survival mode. And survival communities are formed, and the world descends into chaos. There are a lot of people who do whatever they want because there's no order anymore, and all of that. Now, I stopped watching movies and series and all of that some years ago, and I don't know exactly what kind of solution for this they offer in those movies, series, but basically that's not what those movies and series are about. Those movies and series are there in order to brainwash people into getting accustomed to a very severe survival mode scenario that is very chaotic. And the whole pattern that those elites work with is problem, solution, no, I forgot what it was. But basically they create a fake problem of just a false chaos that wouldn't happen if they didn't create. And basically, they offer a so-called solution to that, which is basically what they want in the first place. But if they just offered that to humans just like that, humans would not agree. Humans would not want that. Just like the vaccine. Who would have wanted that vaccine? Nobody. But there had to be a reason for that. The vaccine had to be a solution for something. For a problem, a fake problem. What they're gonna do next is something very, very similar. They're gonna create a fake problem, which is the blackout, which is the cyber attack. And basically what they want is to cleanse the internet, to curate the internet of all the misinformation, which is probably even this video would be labeled as misinformation. And because of that, people like me making this kind of content are always saying, this video is for entertainment purposes only. You know? So, it's a bit fucked up. So, unfortunately for them, we still have freedom. And that's something that bothers them. So they want to mess with that. Big time. And I am Eastern European. I was born in a country that already has the experience of communism. And everything that the world politics are doing right now is basically paving the road towards a worldwide communist state, or at least totalitarian state. Not necessarily communist, but definitely totalitarian, because they don't want people to express themselves freely, and they don't want people to live their best life. They want people to just be at their service. And the whole digital evolution and innovation and all of that, and artificial intelligence and all of those robots and all of that, that's basically gonna serve that agenda. Because what this whole agenda means is a new world order, which is going to create a state that's gonna become a worldwide state. And the means of control are gonna be digital. That's why the push for digital IDs, digital everything. Everything is going to be pushed into a digital format. Money, IDs, information, almost everything that could be digitalized, whatever. Almost everything that could be made digital, they're gonna push for that. Because in that way, it's easier for them to control it. And it's easier for them to have access to your life, to your intimacy, and even your thoughts. Because their whole plan, their whole agenda is to go as far as merging biology with technology, with chips and robots and all of that. And even syncing the digital aspect of reality with your brainwaves. And they want to know what kind of brainwaves you have at all times. Whether you're happy, whether you're sad, what kind of thought patterns you have. And all sorts of things that are very extreme. And that's exactly why a lot of people don't want to believe that this is what is planned for humanity. Because it is terrifying to think of that and to accept the fact that this is the future that you're going to experience. And this is the kind of life that we're gonna... we're basically going to have to be the resistance against all of this. And how exactly we're gonna do that step by step, it's a little bit hard to say, but definitely standing strong together, that's the key. Just being together. And most of all, the cities are going to be turned into prisons. They want to use that recipe of the 15-minute city, which is very dystopian, very hell-like, and they're gonna sell it in the form of something that you're gonna like because it's so convenient. And that's exactly why a lot of people are gonna fall for it first in the USA, because a lot of people in the USA who are a little bit dormant, they like convenience a lot. Americans love convenience. And that's exactly why they're gonna fall for that. A lot of them. And it's not just Americans, like a lot of people worldwide would fall for those things. But gratefully, a lot of people worldwide are also awakened and smart enough to see further than the deception. Now I want to go a little bit into the astrology of all of this. And I mentioned communism prior to this. When communism emerged and got to spread across Europe, not just Europe, but it was mainly rooted in Europe. The astrological conjunction that basically triggered the appearance of communism was Neptune-Saturn conjunction. And it was in Pisces, and it's very communist coded, because Pisces, it's a very dual energy, and it can go very extreme. Like the duality of Pisces can go very, very extreme. The good side of Pisces, it's amazing. It's connection to the heavenly realms, it's connection to the spirit world, it's having a lot of psychic abilities and a lot of clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient abilities and all of that. Being a psychic, all of those beautiful things that transcend the world of physical nature. But the negative side, the negative manifestation of Pisces is illusion, things that are not how they seem. Movies are Pisces. The negative side of Pisces is suffering. And Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Saturn is basically the bad guy. He rules governments, control, authorities. You get the picture. And communism was basically sold as this ideal society, ideal Pisces society, Saturn. An ideal society that it's not real, Pisces. And the real intention behind it is control, Saturn. Amazingly, we're having another Saturn conjunction, another Saturn-Neptune conjunction right now. I mean, not right now when I'm recording and posting the video, but close enough. And it's not going to be pretty. And this whole energy of Saturn and Neptune meeting right now is in the last portion of Pisces and the first portion of Aries, tropically, in the tropical astrology. Sidereally, we could say they kind of touch Aquarius as well. Because it's kind of like if we form a big orb of their conjunction and the place where they're moving right now and where they're going direct and then retrograde for a while, and they're very close to one another, and eventually they're gonna be at the same degree. That whole orb is, like I said, It touches Pisces and Aries tropically, and sidereally it's gonna be Pisces mostly, and also a little bit of Aquarius. And that's why I say that it's really gonna trigger the possibility of the manifestation of a totalitarian state once again. And because it's, it also touches Aquarius, and we are in the age of Aquarius, the illusion is gonna be this exact scenario of a digital world, a very convenient world where technology is at your service. But it's not. And also we have the North Node very close to these two guys. So it's not just Saturn and Neptune together, it's also the North Node close by. And the North Node is very Aquarian in nature. And the North Node can get very obsessive and very ambitious, very goal-oriented, but goal-oriented in the way that basically it doesn't care about the means of reaching that goal. And like I said, the goal is the new world order, forming a worldwide state that's gonna control all humanity. But like I said, we're here and we're not gonna let that happen. Now, the World Economic Forum has been talking about something called Agenda 2030. It's literally called Agenda 2030, so they're basically putting it out there. It's an agenda. And they push this narrative of making everything digital, and they say that by 2030 they want to do this, and they want to do that, and they want to do this, and they want to do that. In terms of making the world better. And a lot of their excuses are basically they use the narrative of what's it called? Warming, environmental things, global warming. That's it. It's such a stupid term that I had to search for it. So they use the notion of global warming, and they make this threat of global warming so serious in their speech that they have to create all of those drastic measures in order to fight against global warming. One of those drastic measures is even blocking out the sun. It's happening in the UK right now. Literally, the UK government, the UK officials are talking about blocking out the sun. Yes, it sounds absurd, it sounds unnatural, it sounds in a lot of ways, but unfortunately it's happening. It's absurd, but it's happening. And they will want to do that all across the world. And if we go into the book of Revelations, which is basically an ancient prophecy of what is happening right now, if we go into the book of Revelations, we're gonna see everything described as it's happening, as it happened, and it's happening. Of course, it's described very symbolically, because it was a vision. The book of Revelations, if you don't know what the book of Revelations is, it's basically the last book of the official Bible. Not just the official Bible, but the thing is that the Bible has been modified so many times. The Bible is not entirely a reliable source of information. Whether we're talking about historical or spiritual source of information, the Bible is not 100% reliable, because the Bible was in the hands of the state for so long. And if you don't know what state I'm talking about, first of all, I'm talking about the Roman state, and then a lot of other European medieval states that used it to basically... But the church, the Christian church, was a political institution in Europe for so long. I still don't know how, I don't know how people still trust the church in any kind of way. It just means they don't know what the church was, and somehow still is, but not that powerful. Like, those people who really trust the church, they just have no idea what... They don't know anything. They have no idea what kind of world they live in and what kind of things the church does, and most of all did. And that's exactly why the Bible is not a reliable source of information. Not entirely. And the longer you go into the Bible, the more back in time you get into the books of the Bible, the more unreliable it gets. Because maybe what I'm gonna say is gonna sound woo-woo for a lot of people, but I was incarnate some 2,000 something years ago in that exact part of the world where the Bible stories were happening. At that time, there was no New Testament. It was only the Old Testament, the old books of the Bible. And even at that time, some of those books were untrustworthy because they had already been modified. So, if some of those books were already modified at that time, imagine how they are today. I mean, alright, so the Bible is not 100% for real. Okay. But the Revelations, the last book of the Bible, that is something we can look into. When I read the book of Revelations, there are a few passages that were modified as well, but very few passages. Exactly because it's the last book of the Bible, and it wasn't as crucial for the church to modify that particular book. It was more crucial for them to modify the Gospels, the stories of Jesus, who is, well, the central figure of Christianity. It was more important for them to modify his story and to erase his wife and his children, because yes, he had a wife and he had children. His wife was Mary Magdalene. And it was more important for them to erase that bit of information and to paint her in negative ways. It's a whole other topic, basically. So that's what they focused on. And a lot of other books where, the feminine nature of both divinity and humanity is demonized and put in a whole world of guilt and shame and all of that. Because basically that's what Christianity did. It was a very misogynistic religion, and all the Abrahamic religions are very misogynistic. That being said, the book of Revelations was not heavily modified. There are a few passages. I can tell you which ones. If you want, I can make further videos about the book of Revelations. But those modified passages are not too many, and they are not modified in such a big way that, it basically cuts the whole message of the book. The book is still valuable. It's very valuable for us today. And basically in the book of Revelations, like I said, the whole thing is painted out. Everything is described. Almost everything is described. Mostly in a symbolic way, but we can decode that. And there are basically some stages of the apocalypse, and we are already into the whole thing. In the book of Revelations, it says that there are going to be 144,000 people incarnate who are basically the ones I don't know how to say it without making it sound I'm lost for words. So basically 144,000 souls, very powerful souls, very spiritually powerful souls who are incarnate at this time, and basically the backbone of the new world, the world of ascended humanity, conscious, awakened humanity. Because these 144,000 people are the people of Christ, the real people of Christ. And there is a passage about the 144,000 that was modified. In the Bible it says that they are all men, which is, again, absurd. And obviously, no. No. And it says that they are all virgins. Again, a whole agenda against women and femininity, and I suppose a lot of you already know what I'm talking about. But other than that, basically, the other steps of the apocalypse are mostly correct, and it says that the 144,000 are not gonna be so much affected by the unfolding of the punishment of humanity, because this is what this is, basically. Everything that's happening right now is the punishment of humanity for humanity being so stupid and evil. Because, like it or not, humanity has allowed evil to take root into itself. There are a lot of people in the spiritual communities today who are very idealistic and very stupid, and they believe in humanity in such an idealistic way, in such a way that humanity is this, like, wow. No, be realistic. Humanity is a species that, come on, there are only very, very few souls incarnate as humans who are truly good, moral. A lot of other humans are just duh. And because they are so duh, they are so easily manipulated into doing a lot of things that are very, very detrimental for themselves and other people. A lot of souls incarnate as humans today are very low in terms of consciousness, in terms of emotional intelligence. A lot of humans today are narcissists. And there are a lot of people in the spiritual communities who willingly turn a blind eye to all of that because they want to live in this delulu mindset of humanity is good and there is good in everything and everything happens with a reason. Yes, everything happens with a reason, but the reason is not being stupid. On the contrary, the reason is to be smart. Both intelligently smart, emotionally smart, spiritually smart. All of that, the whole package. So the 144,000 are in the book of Revelations. It says that these people are going to be marked. So basically there are two marks in the end of times. Humanity is divided into two categories by two marks, either the mark of the beast, either the mark of the angels. When the whole unfolding of the punishment of humanity starts, it is specified in the book of Revelations that basically the angels are told to stop a bit. The angels who carry on the tasks of punishment of humanity, so that the angels who carry the marks can put the marks on the foreheads of the 144,000. And after that process is done, the unfolding of the punishment of humanity can happen. When will that happen? It has already happened in 2023. In 2023, I had a dream, a vision, call it how you want. It was exactly that. An angel carrying out the mark and placing it on my forehead, and not just my forehead. And it's happened. And basically, if we go into the book of Revelations and we look at that exact passage of the marking of the 144,000, then we can look at the whole rest of all the other things. And basically that's our future, our immediate future, what's gonna happen and what we will have to witness. So this is the prophetic side of the story of our reality. And now I want to come back a little bit to the astrological side of things. And that whole thing of Agenda 2030. And the whole thing with the blackout. Recently, there's been a blackout in Spain. Very recently, like a week ago. And all the trains stopped. Everything stopped. Everything that needed electricity stopped. People couldn't use their cards. People couldn't purchase anything with anything else other than cash. And it was shocking for a lot of people. But essentially what that was, it was a test. A test that was meant to basically show how humans would react to a blackout. Gratefully, that blackout didn't last too long. It lasted, I think, 16 hours or something like that. People did actually quite well. A lot of people just connected with other people around them. It wasn't such a devastating thing. The problem is that a lot of people say that the whole situation could descend into a lot of chaos if the blackout lasts more than 3 or 4 days. And talking about the astrological side of things, right now, Saturn is not touching anything that deals severely with electricity. It had a conjunction with the North Node, which is very connected to electricity and the blackout. But it's no longer the case for that. What's going to happen, though, is that starting with 2030 and at the beginning of the 2030s, Saturn is gonna be very, very close to Gemini and even get into the tropical sign of Gemini and meet with Uranus in Gemini. Prior to getting into Gemini, Saturn will go through Taurus. Taurus is money. Taurus is money, resources, everything that is material. Material wealth, material resources, the pleasure side of the material world, other than sex. And anything that you can consider material resources, that's Taurus, including money. Saturn is control, restriction, authorities. What Saturn does is basically restricting things to the bare minimum. So prior to getting into Gemini, he's gonna go through Taurus. That's exactly what he's gonna do there. On a general level, the mission of Saturn in Taurus is to restrict material resources, restrict money, restrict even food, even just the pleasure side of our material life. Now, for spiritual people and for people who want to work with these energies and properly integrate them, Saturn in its higher polarity refers to mastery. So, throughout the transit of Saturn in Taurus, we are called to mature in the area of our material resources and our value system, and really get back to basics and get back to ancient times. Saturn also rules ancient times. If we can integrate in terms of our value system more and more of the ancient values and master our world of material resources, to each their own, as much as everyone can do that. But the thing is that we should do that. Then we can have an easier transit of Saturn through Taurus. But that means being aware of this transit and working with it consciously. The people who are unaware of this, the people who are not spiritual, and the people who think that everything I'm saying right now is just woo-woo, they're not gonna have a lot of fun. And the thing is that after Saturn goes through Taurus, he will go into Gemini. Gemini is information. Gemini is media, social media, is any kind of communication. Gemini is also mentality, mindset, language. Gemini is also trade and technology. Not so much like Aquarius. Aquarius basically takes things to the next level when it comes to technology. But Gemini also rules technology and innovation and the logical side of life. And Uranus is gonna be in Gemini starting this year. And when Saturn goes into Gemini, they're gonna meet. Saturn, again, is authorities, is control, is government. You get the picture? Information, communication, trade, free circulation of things, transportation of both material things and immaterial things. Innovation, technology, internet, electricity, all of that is gonna clash with the desire of the elites to control everything. And when Saturn and Uranus are gonna meet, that's when you can definitely expect a whole series of events of cleansing the internet, as they say, of controlling technology and internet and free speech and information and all of this. So we should prepare. Another thing that I want to point out, there is something called the synodic cycle of planets. It's basically just like the recipe of a moon cycle. So the sun and the moon meet. That's a new moon. And then we have all the phases of the moon. We have the waxing crescent, the first quarter, waxing gibbous, the full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent, and then another new moon. So basically that's a whole moon cycle. In the moon cycle, in the lunar cycle, every phase has an energy, a significance. Every phase of the moon brings something. So is the case for the synodic cycles of planets. It starts with a conjunction of two planets, sometimes even 3 planets or more. When there are more planets, it gets a little bit more chaotic. Usually, we look at synodic cycles of 2 planets. So they have the conjunction, and then one planet is gonna move faster than the other. And, you know, just like the moon moves faster than the sun. And basically, they're gonna have the same phases. They're gonna have a sextile, which is harmonious. It's the equivalent of a waxing crescent, and then they're gonna have a square, which is the equivalent of the first quarter, and so on. Then they're gonna have an opposition, which is the equivalent of a full moon. This is significant because in terms of control, restrictions, authorities, elites, society, state, all of that, the conjunction that is most relevant for this is the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Saturn, like I said, it's the state, the government, the authorities, any kind of authority figure. It's control, it's fears that people have. It's patterns that keep people stuck. It's old ways that don't work out, but people don't get out of those ways because it's just the comfort zone of the old, of the past, of all of that. Saturn is also the ruler of karma. And like it or not, this whole thing of corrupt governments and corrupt authorities is happening because humans have this in their karma. The whole quest of this and the final goal of all of this is that humanity can claim their sovereignty. If we look at the visible planets in the sky, Saturn is the furthest away from the Sun. The Sun is sovereignty. The Sun is the king and the light of God, the light of spirituality, the light of life. The true essence of I am. The furthest away from the Sun in terms of the visible planets, the planets that are visible with the naked eye, it's Saturn. Saturn is the biggest enemy against that. Saturn is the enemy of the Sun. In ancient Egypt, this was very well known. The Sun is Horus, Saturn is Seth. That's why a lot of Satanists today, you know, there's that thing called the Church of Seth. Yeah, because Seth is Saturn. Saturn is Satan. And basically, he is a fallen angel, a fallen, stupid little nothing who needs to redeem himself. And that's exactly why he is in charge of the process of redeeming. That's why he is the Lord of Karma, the Lord of Punishment, the Lord of... Fuck it. So basically, that's also why all of those stupid, dark elites bow to Saturn. Alright. And the true way is the way of the Sun. And the other guys and girls in astrology. Now, Pluto. If we go into the non-visible planets, the planets that we can only look at with a telescope, Pluto is the furthest away. And Pluto is my favorite. But a lot of people are afraid of Pluto. Pluto is very intense. Pluto is Hades, basically. It's the god of the underworld. It's the god of the dead. Pluto rules Scorpio. Scorpio is a very intense energy. It's the most intense energy, and it's the energy of crisis. But it's also the energy of transformation, and most of all, the energy of power, true power, spiritual power. So this is the thing. The downside, the fallen, the negative polarity of Pluto in Scorpio is, again, control, but obsessive control, like control. So when these two planets meet, Saturn and Pluto, it basically talks about the ordeal, any kind of ordeal that humanity is gonna get through, that humanity is gonna meet. But since the people watching this video are souls who are awakened and souls who can stand in their sovereignty, we can work with these energies consciously and invoke our free will. The rest of humanity doesn't know what that is. And the rest of humanity are just gonna fall prey to this energy. Planets that are benefics, like Jupiter, like Venus, even the Sun, they're not gonna be so much, for someone who is unawakened, the movements of these planets are not gonna be so drastic for them. But the movements of Pluto, if you're someone who's not awakened, Pluto's gonna use you. Whatever Pluto does in your horoscope, in your native chart, that energy is gonna use you if you don't use that energy consciously. If you don't allow yourself to integrate that energy. So basically, for the unawakened collective, whenever Pluto meets with Saturn, that's the portal of the new cycle of slavery, basically. And the conjunction that they had, the last conjunction that Pluto and Saturn had, was in Capricorn. Yes, out of all signs, it was Capricorn. The exact sign of Saturn. The exact sign of hardship and turmoil and heavy things and things that just seem to be going on and on and on without an end, without any kind of hope and any kind of salvation, any kind of doom, basically. That's Capricorn in most of its manifestations. Does Capricorn have a good manifestation, a high polarity? Yes, after a very long time. Is the only energy of the zodiac that all the time manifests in a negative way, at least in the first place. For most people, it's gonna manifest in a negative way at all times, until they do something about that, until they master that energy. That's the thing. That the Capricorn basically asks people to mature, truly mature. And for those people who refuse to mature, Capricorn energy is gonna get even worse and worse and worse and worse the more they age. Because what they do is they just age, they don't mature. If you do mature, Capricorn energy is gonna get better with age. But at first, Capricorn sucks for everyone. So this whole cycle of the planets that deal with control and prosecution and hardship, it happened in Capricorn. Yes, because this is the end of times. And the synodic cycle of Pluto in Capricorn lasts about 30 years. So for 30 years since that conjunction, the whole cycle of authorities that want to control the collective is going to be very Capricornian, which is an energy that really is really committed to their plans. And as you may already know, the dark elites have very well prepared plans. And they have these plans prepared since centuries ago. You can go back to even books written 2 centuries ago, and you will see predictive programming in those books. My nose keeps itching. Okay. All right. And I told you about the movement of Saturn through Taurus and then through Gemini when the conjunction of Saturn and Uranus is going to happen, and that's when we are going to have to deal with a lot of things that want to just, like the dark elites basically trying to grasp anything that deals with free speech and information and technology and internet and all of that. And even the ways people connect to one another and communicate to one another. And even transportation. And that's when a lot of technology and media is gonna fall into the hands of the state. And after that, Saturn is gonna go into Crab, Cancer, the zodiac sign of Cancer. I want to call it Crab because it sounds better. When it goes into Crab, it's gonna form an opposition to the meeting point it had with Pluto. So it's gonna be intense. But that's not necessarily the actual opposition. The actual opposition is gonna be when Saturn goes into Leo, because at that time, like, Pluto is already in Aquarius. So when Saturn is gonna be in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, they're gonna form an opposition. An opposition it's exactly that. It's opposing forces. That's when humanity, that's basically the last call for humanity in terms of sovereignty and authority. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. Pluto already is in Aquarius. Basically, we are Aquarius. We are the Aquarius force. So Pluto is gonna be on our side, and Pluto is the stronger planet. Strongest, actually. In all astrology, Pluto is the boss. Saturn is gonna be in Leo. Leo is the sign of the sun. It resembles exactly the story of Seth and Horus. Seth killed Osiris and took the throne for himself. Leo is the sign of the ruler, the sign of the king, the sign of the throne. Saturn in Leo. Saturn is the dark state, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, the dark elites, and it's gonna be in Leo. They want to make themselves kings. That's when, because basically the opposition is the equivalent of a full moon. And a full moon, it's a completion. The moon is full, you see it. It's the process is, it's full. And then everything that comes after the full moon, it's the release. The purging of the unwanted. And the preparation for the new cycle that is going to occur at the next conjunction. So when Pluto will oppose Saturn in Leo, basically Saturn, like I said, Saturn wants to make himself king in Leo. Leo is the sign of the king. And in the world of humans, this means that Saturn will want to make himself king through Saturnian groups. The dark elites, the control groups. And it's gonna do that based on all the work it did through all of the signs it went through since the conjunction it had with Pluto in Capricorn. Since the conjunction it had with Pluto in Capricorn, it went through Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Crab, and then Leo. So it starts with Aquarius, it starts with technology, it starts with mindsets, with groups of people, with society at large. And then when it gets in Leo, it wants to enslave that. But gratefully, we have Pluto on our side. Aquarius is also the sign of rebellion. It opposes Leo. It opposes the king. When the king is not a good king, Aquarius can use rebellion. Aquarius can turn into rebellion. And basically, Aquarius screams the power of the people. Truly the power of the people, not the stupid kind of democracy that the USA claims to have and all of that, blah, blah, blah. No, like true power of the people. Pluto, like I said, it's the planet of power, true personal sovereignty that starts inwards, that starts by working on yourself, on your shadow, on your darkest aspects of your being, and most of all working on your root chakra, and then from that ascend into your crown chakra. Pluto in itself, like Pluto and Scorpio, govern the chakra system and the spiritual body. Pluto and Scorpio are they represent the priests, both the dark priests and the good priests. The magic, both the black magic and the white magic. So we can use the presence of Pluto in Aquarius for ourselves, for our benefit. And even though we're not as numerous as the majority of humanity who are just zombies, we are a lot more powerful spiritually. And like I said, with Pluto in Aquarius, we can definitely shift the course of this whole scenario. So, let me know in the comments if you wanna dive a little bit deeper into the Book of Revelations and all those things that are mentioned there, and have fun with that and just see how exactly this whole thing is gonna turn out. I thank you for being incarnate at this point in this world. It's not easy, but you can do it. We can do it. And that's the key. We can do it. We need to be united, to stand strong together. I love you and keep shining.